So we can see we have created the the product entity type. So now we have to create the staging table for this organization and the product. So we can see the relationship already present, just need to add the staging table. So staging table for the organization will be STG or CRM system, which is already available. We will select all the columns. Once we add that, we need to define the lookup value. So for the column called as BO class code, we have to define the lookup. So go to select the staging table, select the base object class code, and from the RBO class code add the lookup and save it. Similarly, we will add for the product table as well. So we created a staging table for the prod with the lookup value. Now let's go to the hierarchy and now create the completely new entity for the employee. So there is an option, right click on the entity object, create new entity, select create new entity base object, and here give the name as a BO employee. You can select the foreign key column for the entity type. So we know that there is hierarchy available, there are relation type available. So we have to select the appropriate foreign key column for the entity types. So here the entity type option, we have the either base or row ID object from the base object or the base object class code. So we'll select base object class code column and click OK. So once you select that, you can see that relationship is already created and one table also get created into the schema. We can see that is EMP. So we have to add the both extra column, that is name and EMP ID, and save it. Of course, we have to add the lookup as well by creating staging table. Now we added the staging table and we have defined the lookup on the base object class code column. So let's create the mapping for all these base objects. So in order to create the mapping, we should have the landing tables. So let's create the landing table first and then map those. So if you see the BO EMP table, it has the BO class code, which is having the varchar data type and the length is 255, the name and the employee ID. Similarly, we have created the employee landing table with the BO class code, varchar data type and the 255 length and the name and employee ID. Similarly, we will create the landing table for the employee, for the product and the organization. So we created landing table, organization and the production. Let's go to the mapping section and create mapping for the each table. So I'm giving the mapping name for the employee like MP employee. Select the landing table and the corresponding staging table. We'll do the auto mapping, and in order to do the auto mapping, go to the diagram, select right click, auto mapping, and we'll do the EMP employee ID, which will map to the PK source of the staging table. Similarly, we'll create mapping for the organization and the product. So we are done with the creation of the mapping for the employee, organization, product. Now the next thing we have to do is adding the entity type. So for the each entity, so we have the three entities: BO employee, BO product and BO org. So for each entity we will add the entity type. So select, right click on that given entity, right click and select add entity type. So it give us a one more screen where we have to fill the corresponding entity type. So this is employee, so I will give the employee as a entity type. So this is code, employee. Color I will choose for the employee is red, so like dark red. So this is employee, and the small icon will the single person I will choose, and the large icon will be again the single person. So you can choose any of the other kind of icons. So once you've done that, so we can see the row ID generated for this employee is of 1, and you can see the same thing is reflected inside under the BO employee. Similarly, we will create the employee type for the product and also for the organization. So we can see we have created the entity type employee for the employee, product for the BO product, and the organization for the BO organization. So if you want to see the record in which table it is get saved, so you can go to the CBO class query, and you can see what are the current entity types you have created. Those are saved here. So the code is like employee, organization, and product, and display is whatever we are given. So these are the things we have to configure under the entities. Now the next thing, if you want to delete the entity, then you can delete that by right click on that entity, like here. If I go and right click, and you can delete the entity type, we can do that. Or if you want to edit that, we can also edit that also. Now let's go and add the hierarchies. So we added the entities, entity types. The next thing is hierarchy. So there will be two major entities, hierarchies will be available. So first is employer. So we right click, add hierarchy, and here we'll give the employer, and we'll add that and save it. So once it is saved, the employer can be seen inside the hierarchies. Okay, now the next thing we are going to add is the product. Product is one of the hierarchy. Once we successfully added that, we can see all these hierarchies inside the query called as a hierarchy. So here the what are the hierarchy we just added, employer, the product, we can see. So what are this hierarchy or the class code and the relation type? So these are the supporting table which are required for the hierarchies. Now once we add the entity and the hierarchy, we will add the relationships. So we'll use the existing association table to convert into the relationship based object. So just right click on that and select the association table, and there is one option available that is called as a convert to relationship based object. So select that object, that option, and click OK. The next screen will open. Here you have to provide some particular details. Suppose we are going to create the relationship between the organization and employee. So create entity based object one as organization. The row ID is basic column we will select, and the second is employee. So once you change that, the what are the existing column